developmental researcher Paul Abolo and an environmentalist Akan Odon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Let me start with you now, Paul Abolo, if you're there. Can we attribute this flooding to climate change? Paul Abolo, did you hear me?
I can't hear. No, I can hear you now, but I didn't get you. I lost you for a moment.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Again? Very well.
All right, thank you for joining us. I said let's start with the real issue of this flooding now. Can we attribute it to climate change?
Yes, definitely. The primary cause of this flooding is the intense rainfall, which is induced by climate change. And climate change is the primary cause. We have secondary causes like environmental management, how we block the channels, and then, of course, the third cause, which is slightly remote, is population increase. But we need to go back to look at the climate change. We know that the temperatures are rising, the sea levels are rising. We know that the rainfalls are coming at increased intensity, and this has progressively increased over the years. And if nothing is done, it's going to continue to increase.
Yeah, and talking about helping to stem the flood now, Paul, what measures do you think can be done if you think that it's about climate change?
Well, we need to handle this from 3 levels, and we need to look at, first of all, we need to look at the impacts. Once we understand the impacts, then we can decide on how to mitigate the impacts. Then we have to put adaptive measures against future occurrences or to reduce the impacts of future occurrences. So the impact is what we are dealing with right now, and I'm really grateful that the European Union made that commitment of €1 million, because first of all, you need to take care of the people that are impacted. There are many who have been displaced from their homes. There are many in the IDP camps. There are people who are facing health challenges. And there are businesses that have been impacted, especially the farms. I know most of the farms are flooded. So we need to look at that mitigation first, and then we can now progress to do adaptation. So currently, I think we need to see how we can help the people that have been impacted. Like we talked about Anambra State, Niger State, and Kogi State, they are the worst hit. But there are a few other states that are hit too. We need to understand that the amount of money that has been budgeted for mitigation is grossly inadequate. We are looking at damage of about 3 trillion naira. The minimum you need for mitigation at this stage is 1% of that. So we are looking at 30 billion to be able to take care of this. We need to go beyond our immediate environment. We need to go global to look for support. We need to go to climate change action. We need to look at what the UNFCCC is saying about this. I know last year at COP23, the UNFCCC launched
we also have
the resilience program.
Paul, we also have Akan Odon with us. We almost thought he wasn't connected with us. So Akan, if you're there, Paul just mentioned future occurrences. How can the Nigerian government proactively prepare for future occurrences?
So fundamentally, I think the areas affected currently have got very strong vulnerability to flood disasters because of its location, and their coastal framework. And so I think in a sense, this is not likely going to stop anytime soon. I mean, it's not only a Nigerian issue. There are many countries experiencing these massive disasters in different levels because of, obviously, the impact of climate change. And so for me, I think it's about preparation of the different state governments, but driven through a very high-level policy, Nigerian government, to put in place strategies for prevention and also especially for mitigation, but also for management of this flood risk. And so I think in a sense, the money allocated to the flood management obviously is not enough. But I think with the resources in place, there can be the institution of laid down strategies to help in several levels to prevent or to prevent lives being lost due to this issue. And ultimately, I think it's about the right policies being put in place, but getting the key stakeholders in place to be able to have real good conversations around how they can even almost like kind of predict potential occurrences and arrange for mitigations on the ground to actually prevent these.
All right. Now, very briefly now, Akan, from what we all understand, the European Union has approved about 400 million naira to assist about 60,000 people in 3 out of 9 states. But the question is now, what can be done to ensure that these monies are utilized judiciously? You know, it isn't expended for perhaps private reasons.
So I think for me, it's about understanding a holistic view of what the issues are on the ground. Now, these are heavy flooding that's taking place. Now, in a sense, has research been done or to survey the happening or the event itself to understand where were the areas where you had, if you like, more vulnerabilities that potentially could be the same case in the future. I mean, the flood might have happened now, but it could happen again. And so I think for me, it's about preparing for future floods using the available resources on the ground so that at the end of the day, you can actually manage when it happens. Now, to prevent from happening, you have to go through institutional systems to be able to make sure that the funds are spent appropriately and not just put in someone's pocket. Now, there are already laid down institutions on the ground. The Niger Delta Development Commission, for example, is an institution responsible for the management development of the Niger Delta. Every state in the Niger Delta area has got ministries of environment, institutions in place. Now, but ultimately, you need to get stakeholders on the ground. So it's not only a function of the government driving it, but the government driving it in partnership with academia, with civil societies, and also with the communities that are actually suffering this issue. If it's just kept within one person's portfolio or purview to actually make it happen, then you might struggle. But once you get a stakeholder arrangement in place, then it's much, much easier to actually make sure that the funds are spent appropriately based on the nature of the issue.
All right. Akan Odon, a developmental researcher, and Paul Abolo, environmentalist, would like to thank you both for joining us on TVC News Hour.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.